Okay, hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. Squiggles, you had the first sniped out from underneath you. Okay, hi, and welcome to more Great Ace Attorney 2. I hope y'all are doing good. I don't know how this stream is gonna look today, because, Before stream this morning, because I was doing the, multi-world stream this morning, I tried to sleep at midnight, and then I slept for 3 hours and couldn't get back to sleep afterward. And so after the 6.5 hour long multi-world stream, I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a nap. And then I collapsed on bed and went into a coma for 6 hours. It's another first-class cabin, yet its door is completely unguarded. Empty as well. I had a quick look inside earlier. Yeah, but like, I didn't mean to sleep for that long. I meant to sleep for like maybe 2 hours, and it just spiraled out of control into me sleeping for 6 hours. The seed for that multi-world rando, oh my god, it was bad. Lapis was the only one that was able to, finish her seed without cheating. I managed to finish mine after cheating in a couple of items that were locked behind super, super late progression gates for other people. How long did it take me to get sword? 2.5 hours. Though I confess, I didn't investigate the wardrobe. There may very well be a young Japanese fellow inside, perspiring merrily. Brain said no, you're sleeping for 6 hours and that's final. You're referring to Naruhodo. You know that very well that he's currently perspiring merrily in court. Does it not strike you though, Mikotoba? Why the man stands guard only in front of this cabin when both are apparently vacant? This would appear to be an alarm bell. All hell would break loose if that thing were to ring. The whole crew would know about it. Here goes then. Pardon me in advance. You, what are you doing? They're at sea. That would be a very bad problem. What's going on down there? Seaman Stroganoff, report at once. Sorry, sir, nothing to report. It was just stupid trick. No, not by me, by world famous. No, as I told you. Now, Shulms, now. That's not your voice. Done. In 5 seconds, eh? Well, don't stand there gawping at my brilliance, Mikotoba. In we go. Oh, yes. Gracious. It would appear that the occupant of this cabin did indeed disembark rather hurriedly. It's clothes on the floor there. They're Seishiro's, without question. Well, it seems we are just a little too late. Yes, by about 2 hours. Still, whilst we're here, we should investigate thoroughly. There may well be 2 hours worth of clues to find in here. But a burly crewman may return at any moment, Shulms. Indeed he may, which makes this all the more thrilling. speaking tube here, look. Oh, it's been stoppered with some cloth. The voices of the crewmen on the bridge aren't an annoyance, I suppose. Or indeed, so the voices in this cabin aren't heard elsewhere. Something have happened in here that was for no one else's ears, do you think? Either that, or it could be to prevent snakes from entering. It's really become a favorite case of yours, hasn't it? Quite the exquisite glass, I must say. See here how it... Something wrong, Sholmes. He suddenly trailed off. Ice, Mikotoba. Ice. What opulence the first-class passengers enjoy. Chilled drinks. Pardon? Could it be that the steamship is equipped with an electrically refrigerated cold room, do you think? Well, it's a luxury liner, after all. They have enormous refrigerators for storing all sorts of lavish produce as well as ice. On our voyage from Japan, we enjoyed culinary delights from all over the world. Suddenly, Mikotoba, the sight of you is making my mouth water. Holmes, I don't think that means what you think it means. Still, I'm flattered. Sorry, give me a sec. I haven't taken on the flavor of the food I ate, you know? It's the waste paper basket. Look, there's still rubbish inside. Indeed. Then let us pry. I've discovered recently I have a penchant for exploring the contents of others' waste paper baskets. I sincerely hope only for your work. In a cobbler coma? Yeah, how did that turn out, Squiggles? Here we have a notice issued to the passengers from 3 days ago. 3 days ago? The night before we arrived in London, then. I was still aboard myself. Evacuation drill notice, 31st of October. Oh, what? Ah, yes, there was an evacuation drill. I remember now. For safety and security, all first-class passengers were constantly under the watchful eye of the crew. It was a welcome relief to have some privacy for once. I can't look at any of my evidence. It's going pretty good. How about you, Sachi? That's a substantial heap of clothes on the floor. An overcoat, shirts, and a dressing gown. Omohiki work trousers, Tenzin robe, Haramaki waistband. Only the clothing of a Japanese man. And clearly, Japanese men are unaccustomed to the culture of the wardrobe. Looks to me as if they've been thrown in a heap like that in something of a hurry. Indeed. You could help yourself to a Japanese man's shirt, perhaps. I'm sure you made mention of packing too few. Very likely drown in one of Seishiro's shirts. No, I'll just buy any extras I need, I think. According to the report I was given, Naruhodo was concealing himself in Asogi's wardrobe. Indeed he was. and it was of a similar size to this one. You must climb inside yourself, my dear fellow. What? Number 4. It was the site of my first fateful meeting with Mr. Naruhodo. You can experience the moment for yourself now, complete with my dramatic rhetoric. Come along now, in you go. This will only take a moment.
Really, Sholmes? Surely you can just tell me what you said.
Well, I uttered some brilliant remark and opened the wardrobe to reveal the stowaway murderer.
I think I'll just read about it in the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes. These are the rules of passage. Passengers must not keep weapons or other dangerous objects in their cabin. Pets are also strictly forbidden. Additionally, there are severe punishments for stowing away in wardrobes and/or travel cases.
They've caught on to you. I feel the rules have increased since last I read them. Probably just my imagination.
But the fact they're not straight on the wall, doesn't that strike you?
You may be right. Probably just your imagination, though. A trifle. And you know what I always say, Mikotoba? There's nothing important about trifles.
But trifles are very delicious, though. It's probably just my imagination, but I think that might be slightly off. You have reading material to keep passengers occupied for the long sea voyages. I found the mixture of classic literature and easy reading to be most satisfactory, I must say.
Whoever stalked this bookcase was a hopeless heretic. There's no copy of the Adventures of Herlock Sholmes, my dear fellows.
I'm afraid it's just me, but no, you're quite right. More blasphemous than overlooking the Bible.
That sounds like some shit that I would say offhandedly. I shall leave a copy behind. I just happen to have one with me.
You're a true missionary of the Church of Great Detectives, aren't you? All's a slightly different color just here. You see?
Indeed. What you have observed arises when a frame that has been hanging for some time is removed. Perhaps your friend is an art thief.
There's a bold deduction worthy of a great detective, I'm sure.
He may very well be the elusive thief who's been plaguing France's galleries of late.
I think perhaps we should focus our attentions elsewhere, Sholmes, don't you? That outline on the wall. I feel as though I've spotted something of a similar shape and size elsewhere. Oof.
That's a very sizable trunk indeed.
They sure was partial to all things large.
And a rather clumsy fellow if he failed to notice he'd left that behind.
Perhaps he left it on purpose. It's lighter than you might think, but still a hindrance to a speedy escape.
Pity. It's locked, so we can't look inside.
Only 5 seconds from now, the situation will be quite different, though.
Sadly not. It has a 7-digit combination lock. And I'm not in a morose enough mood to work through all the combinations at present.
You're still here. Ah, Abel Seaman Stroganov. Hello again.
I was beginning to think you'd never materialize.
Or waiting for me.
Of course. I was expecting you to burst in with a hearty Russian profanity far sooner. Was in trouble with Captain because of trick you played before. Or innocent chicken. It's all your fault. Jeep is leaving port soon. Get off now. Of course, we shall disembark presently, my dear fellow. But first, there's something that must be done. What are you talking about? Why, naturally, the debunking of your deceit and barring of the truth. Ekoi? I'm afraid I see through your lies. For one thing, Mr. Jikoku has not yet left this vessel at all. Ugh. And for another, my dear Seaman Stroganoff, you know exactly where the man is, even as we speak, don't you? How can you? Good gracious, Sholmes. I mean, you've worked it out. All of it. That's probably when he probably has it on his arm because Seishiro told him to keep Sholmes out. It's not Sholmes, it's numbers. Oh. every time I see the the whole letters that are actually numbers, my brain always goes to the first case of Danganronpa. It really has been too long, hasn't it, old friend? 10 years, no less. So, would you care to join me for a dance of my inimitable logic and reasoning? Nothing would please me more. What is this? We have but minutes until the vessel puts to sea. No games now. The time is of the essence. Ooh, this is good music. Mr. Stroganoff, allow me to remind you of your earlier claim. You told us that Jikoku left the ship some 2 hours ago. Ah, that is what I said. Sadly, that was a rather clumsy lie. You see, there's something in this room that quite clearly contradicts it. What? Yes, of course. I see you've noted it too, Mikotoba. Then please, do take the lead. What in this cabin shows the impossibility of Jikoku having disembarked 2 hours ago? Let us see what the last 3 years have done to your observational skills then, Mikotoba. It's been 10 years since we last did this, Sholmes, not 3. Why, of course it has, quite. Now, all the clues are here in this cabin for your eyes to see. But as I always say, you must not merely look, but observe. Observe and the answers become clear. So, impress me. I think I can manage that.
Take that!
Perhaps you should have cleared away that glass. How curious that the ice shouldn't have melted, despite it being abandoned 2 hours ago. Ugh. It would appear that the man was here in this very cabin until moments before our arrival. With this well-chilled glass in hand. Mind off the refreshments, Sholmes. One might even conclude that somebody informed him of our boarding. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Stroganoff? But why would Seishiro run from us? Before we consider that question, allow me to confirm one small matter. Would I be correct in saying that these first-class cabins of the SS Grouse are the same ones in which you and Mr. Jikoku were accommodated on your voyage from Japan?
That's right, they are.
Sorry, give me a sec.
That's right, they are. I was in the cabin next door, and Seishiro was, yes. 2 days in this very cabin during our voyage.
As I suspected, for you see...
The ripped Russian man do rock a crop top.
There are traces of this cabin, or in this cabin, of a dark secret that Mr. Jikoku had to hide.
What traces?
That's not your voice. They're very good, Banana. Like, I think I said this last night to, or not last night, the night before to Lobster, but like, if you are at all interested in these games, I highly recommend picking up the Ace Attorney trilogy. The original trilogy is really good. And I haven't played the sequel trilogy, but that's gonna be the next set of Ace Attorney games that I stream.
I know nothing about this.
Ah, this is news to you, is it, Mr. Stroganov?
So what exactly are you getting at?
As I said, there are traces in this cabin of some nefarious activity. Something that appears out of place, which I'm quite sure won't have escaped your notice.
Something out of place in here.
That's the key to this, Mikotoba. The remnants of the dark deed that took place in here are being masked by something quite incongruous. I must say, I didn't foresee ever doing this dance of deduction with you again, Mikotoba.
Oh, quite. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, as we well know. Now then, let's see if I can't uncover the truth here.
Yes, you have the floor, my dear fellow.
Take that!
It's the rules of passage in this frame here. They're obviously out of place. They're hanging crooked on the wall, as if they were put here in a hurry.
Yeah, he did that when we pointed out the thing earlier. Yes, as I'm sure you've already concluded. That frame was originally over there. The shape and size are a perfect match.
Ah, you're right. Let that frame move.
Hardly the most observant of crewmen, are you, Mr. Stroganov? It's still crazy to me that Mikotoba is actually like this version of Sholmes's Watson, and the person named John H. Watson was not. I would think that your captain is quite justified in having his reservations about your reliability.
Dear, really seem to touch a nerve.
So, Mikotoba, why don't you lift that frame off the wall?
That looks... a bullet hole. What? Who's been shooting walls?
These games are occasionally very off the wall. I mean... they get further off the wall in the main series games, because the main series games is like, mystical lawyer superpowers. Like, you got the first game that, like, doesn't have... It's got spirit channeling from Maya, but that's about it. And then you get into, like, the second game, and it's like, okay, you have a rock that's a lie detector. Well, kind of a lie detector. And then you get into, like... you get into, like, Apollo Justice, and it's like, yes, magic bracelet that helps me see when people are having, like, nervous twitches on the stand. Honestly, I really like the bracelet mechanic and the mood matrix from Dual Destinies. Still love Mr. Luke at me. Ace Attorney is the romance novel version of lawyers. Absolutely. I see the projectile has been removed. Clearly, the careful occupant of this room has already disposed of it. Now then, Mr. Stroganov. Ugh. I have the distinct impression that you're attempting to shield said occupant.
Don't know what you're talking about. Why would I try to protect Eastern Stranger?
Ah, so we're talking about the same man, I see. Good.
Ugh.
I'm sure we can get to the bottom of this in no time, aren't you? Because there's some very noteworthy evidence that explains the reason why you're lying for the man. Yes, you've been told to keep up this pretense, as clearly shown by...
They don't know how to approach this one, Sholmes.
Ah, my dear Mikotoba, simply keep first principles in mind. Study your subject from every angle, and I'm quite sure that you'll see it. In fact, I'd put a wager on it.
So I'm to glare at the fellow from all sides. Well, I can certainly do that.
Take that!
It's almost too obvious for words. Quite. The universal language of the world. Money.
Ugh. Wager that Eastern fellow in question. Seishiro Jikoku, yes?
Yeah.
So, I presume you realize what this means.
Yeah, the tap dancing is great.
There are clear signs that a crime has been committed in this cabin. The way you're going, sir, you'll find yourself accused of being an accomplice. But...
I believe you know, Mr. Stroganov. You know where Mr. Jikoku is hiding, at this precise moment in time. As always, Mikotoba, in matters of deduction, the furtive glance is your unfaltering ally.
Yes, I think you're onto something there, Sholmes. Found the chink in this burly fellow's armor.
We need only follow the man's gaze to know where our prey is hiding. The slightest flicker of the pupils, a minutely delayed blink. Nothing escapes my attention, even that which is barely perceptible.
Hardly call this barely perceptible, Sholmes. The man's turned his entire head. Not exactly what you describe as a furtive glance, is it? It's almost too obvious.
Hey, Not, how are you doing? We shall let your tapping toes decide, my dear fellow.
Take that!
turned immediately to look at this large trunk, didn't you?
It broke my brain. It was a good reveal. Like, genuinely, I've gotten very minor spoilers. Like, mainly character design spoilers, but, like, I'm really surprised that this got kept under, kept under wraps as well as it has. Because, like, this is the sort of shit that I would totally expect to be spoiled on. But... turned immediately to look at this large trunk, didn't you? Ah. Truth is, Seishiro Jikoku was unable to escape from the ship in time. And is, at this very moment, doing his best to stifle his breath inside this trunk. If he still has a breath to take, I fear he may be running dangerously low on air. I imagine he didn't count on us making a nuisance of ourselves for quite so long. I think it would be in everyone's best interests for us to open the trunk as quickly as possible. But how can we? You're forgetting about the combination lock. We talk about how that combination lock is absolutely not engaged currently. Maybe? Don't know the 7-digit code. The combination lock can't be opened from inside the trunk. Therefore, there must have been an arrangement for somebody to open it after our departure. Of course. This one's written in 3-4. Or not 3-4, this one's written in 4-4. In short, before Jikoku himself had hid inside before Jikoku himself hid inside that trunk, he must have told somebody the 7-digit number for the lock. I'm sure you can confirm, Mr. Stroganoff. No, I know nothing about the combination code. Don't move a muscle, my good seaman. Now, Mikotoba, would you do the honors and open the trunk? What on earth do you expect me? It's a 7-digit number, remember? Quickly now, we have little time. So let's see, 5631045. Oh wait, there's no 6. Is that a 0 then? Three 1-0-4-5. Oh, it's a 2. I'm always, okay, completely, like, I always struggle with, like, reading handwriting numbers, because so many people, so many people write numbers so differently that it throws me off whenever I have to try to read people's handwriting numbers. Also, Taco, Beef Stroganoff is the first seaman that we encountered in the first game.
Take that!
I mean, he does seem to be off the mark a bit, a lot of the time.
Did it? It's open. You had to meddle, didn't you? Well, Eugen, you found me now. Seishiro.
I think there's still a bit of idiot in Sholmes.
I was really hoping beyond hope not to find you here, you know. But you're not entirely unsurprised, I take it. No, quite. I just wish it were some other way.
Well, are you ever going to introduce me? Himbo Savant.
Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Sholmes. I've read stories of many of your exploits.
Oh wait, this isn't quite your voice. Your voice is the judge voice.
Excuse my manners, Sholmes. This is Mr. Jigoku, my old friend and traveling companion.
The devil is in the details, Mikotoba. I believe you meant to say your old friend and traveling companion. Who made the cowardly decision to flee the country without a word to anyone when things turned sour.
I see my reputation precedes me as well. What an honor.
Well, Seishiro, going to explain all this. His beefiness is his mind. Where's the, I know that they're like opposite sides of the scale, but like, where's the cross section between Himbo and Twink? That's what Sholmes is. He's got the silly silly goofiness of a Himbo, but his design is a lot more likenable to a Twink. A Twimbo? I don't think I've ever seen that term before.
Know it all by now, I imagine. What you didn't know, of course, is that 3 days ago, on the night before our arrival in Britain, an attempt was made on my life here in this very ship. Reaper of the Bailey. Yes, I've since heard. As you were once prosecuted by the Reaper, weren't you? 10 years ago now, mind you.
Twinkbo.
Because you were prosecuted by the Reaper, weren't you? 10 years ago now, mind you. I had no idea at the time what a dangerous individual he was. Anyway, when we arrived in London to find the symposium was postponed until goodness knows when, it became all too apparent to me that I might very well be targeted again. So you decided to flee the capital without saying a word to me about it? I'm afraid so. Yes. Of course, I realize now that I really ought to have confided in you.
It's somewhat surprising, I must say. Twinkbo sounds like a weapon that you would use in 14.
What is?
Well, first-class cabins aboard luxury steamships are in very short supply. It's more than a little hard to believe that this one just happened to be available.
So says the protagonists of some colorful short stories. Well, I don't care for your opinion. The cabin did just happen to be available, so I purchased a ticket, and here I am. I've just seen for myself the obvious remnants of that incident in this cabin. So you had already purchased your return ticket before we even docked in Dover, had you? To prevent anyone else taking this cabin and seeing the evidence, is that it?
I have nothing to say to you. Well, In a mere 5 minutes, the ship will set off on its onward voyage and not make port again until Italy. I'm afraid we must insist that you disembark with us at once.
You have no jurisdiction over my movements. We have this, Seishiro. Take it. It's a termination of your diplomatic immunity. What is it? It's a subpoena from the Old Bailey. You're a man of the law. You know what the ramifications of ignoring a document like this from the British courts would be. Came prepared then, Eugen. Come on, let's go.
One moment.
What is it, Mr. Sholmes? Or what is it, Sholmes?
Inside Mr. Jigoku's trunk, I found this rather fascinating trinket.
What's that, Seishiro? Can't help you, I'm afraid. Just some small component from something. But what? I have no idea.
It's the top of the pocket watch that got broke off.
By the look on his face, I think he genuinely doesn't know.
Well, let us pocket it as a small souvenir of our brief sojourn in France.
Well, young Naruhodo, I think we've done as much as we can, I'm afraid. The rest will be on the shoulders of you and your assistant.
So, that like, more than definitely confirms for me that he's the one that killed Gregson, because, I think that the bullet hole in the wall is actually from when he shot Gregson, because the body pierced all the way through Gregson, as we heard earlier. And he probably killed Gregson before all of the, oh god. That would mean that when we saw him with the big trunk in the hotel lobby, when we saw him with the big trunk in the hotel lobby at the very start of the case, he probably already had Gregson's body in it. Kazuma Asogi, I know you, and I know you wouldn't lie, but still, there's no doubt that you're holding something back. You know more than you're saying.
During the past 30 minutes, while this court was adjourned, all possible efforts were expended. But sadly, Mr. Jigoku's whereabouts could not be ascertained.
We must accept this unfortunate conclusion, that the Reaper has already done the deed. There's no sense in wasting any more of the court's time. The prosecution calls for an immediate verdict.
Objection!
No, trial cannot end now. You're a Japanese man, Ryunosuke. You should know when to lay down your sword. And you should know never to presume when the battle is won. The court has already been presented with all the evidence and heard all relevant testimony. And there can only be one conclusion, that the accused is guilty. All relevant testimony? Far from it. There's still a crucial witness from whom the court is yet to hear a single word of testimony.
In that case, call your witness to the stand at once, counsel.
Yes, my lord. Tomorrow, if possible.
The witness is already on his way, and scheduled to arrive tomorrow.
Who on earth is this crucial witness? Seishiro Jigoku. very man allegedly murdered by the Reaper. Judge Jikoku found him? But the investigations of every policing resource in the capital suggest that Jigoku is already dead. How in the name of God did you find the man? He was located in France during the recess, at the port of Dunkirk. Thanks to one of Mr. Herlock Sholmes' famous deductions. Herlock Sholmes. Inspector Gregson almost certainly met with Mr. Jigoku on the night of his death, because along with Prosecutor Asogi, Gregson was on a mission to assassinate the man. Which means that Seishiro Jigoku is the sole witness who can clarify exactly what happened aboard the SS Grouse on the 31st of October. Well, it would appear that it's too soon to move on adjudication at this point. The prosecution concurs. The court must hear Mr. Jigoku's testimony. No judgment should be passed until all testimony has been considered. In that case, I hereby call the end of today's proceedings. Court will reconvene at the same hour tomorrow. No objections from either side. He admitted that he went on the murder mission, but he also claims that he didn't actually do, like, he didn't ever have any intention of actually killing the person. Yeah, he basically said, nah. I mean, here's the thing, Lobster. We've had convicted murderers as the prosecutor in other Ace Attorney games. No, my lord. No objections, my lord. Live to fight another day, by the skin of our teeth. The legal system of this world is a mess. Yeah. There's even an entire arc about it, through Apollo Justice through to, the end of Dual Destinies, if I'm not mistaken. There's a whole story arc about everyone realizing, oh wow, this legal system is kind of fucked, isn't it? The unexpected halt of proceedings sent a clamor around the courtroom. But outside of the Bailey, where Londoners knew nothing of the secret trial within, it was a typical still night. Then, at little past 8 o'clock that evening, Mr. Sholmes and his partner returned to Baker Street. That's a lot of food. We have returned, my dear fellows. Welcome back to Britain, and thank you for your timely help. Think nothing of it. I believe you've had an even more wearing day than Mikotoba and I know. You could say that. You're on the brink of defeat in court earlier. I wonder if this is gonna be an actual, like, full investigation segment, or if this is gonna be just like a, here, let's fill in some of the stuff that doesn't have directly to do with the case. So this prosecutor, Asogi, had you on the ropes, did he? And he's your best friend, you say? Well, it's not really the man I knew in Japan anymore. Kazuma's changed.
Oh, Mr. Naruhodo.
Fun drinking game. Every time that Susato says Mr. Naruhodo, take a shot, you'll die of alcohol poisoning. I'm realizing more and more as this goes on that it's like... I mean, it's incredible. To think that he'd even entertain the idea of acting as the Reaper's assassin. Well, nevertheless, you must introduce me. Take a shot every time Shulm says, "Dear fellow." After all, I've only ever met your young man as a corpse. Take a shot every time Barok said something racist. You wouldn't be able to make it through one trial. Take a shot every time my learned Nipponese friend is said, or learned friend. All this started almost a year ago now. Mr. Shulm still hasn't told us the truth about what really happened back then. About the motivation for what he himself described as a great detective's lie. Now then, I must say, it's really quite a journey all the way to France.
Well, it is another country, Mr. Shulms. So, what news of Judge Jigoku?
Welcome to Scotland Yard. The investigating detective there have a lot of questions for the man. Take a shot whenever a witness commits perjury, but perjury isn't mentioned. Poor Professor Mikotoba. This must be quite a shock for him. Ah, yes. I picked this up at the telegraph office on our way home. What is it? Surely you haven't forgotten already. I put it upon you for the matter only yesterday. Upon me, Shulms. I had to fill out your telegram in Japan and foot the bill as well.
Oh, you've had a reply already?
What was so urgent, though, Mr. Shulms? Such matters can wait until later. I'm far too hungry for an involved conversation at present.
Well, that's good news, because supper is ready, everyone.
Ah, and what a feast it is! If I were none the wiser, I'd think the trial were won already. Roast beef, kippers, stew, steak, kidney pie, Yorkshire pudding. Oh, Yorkshire puddings. I want Yorkshire puddings. What shook Mikotoba so bad? He and Jigoku are like friends. Gosh, I want Yorkshire puddings. It's been so long since I've had Yorkshire puddings.
Tomorrow could be a very long day, so eat up.
Jigoku is not dead. He's alive. He's the big burly dude that we were just talking to. He's not dead. It's just, you know, he was trying to run away. We have not found out who Iris's father is. That question is still hanging over everything. In that case, I think I'll seat myself just here. This place appears to be the only one seat with a helping of pheasant as well.
Oh, sorry, Hurley, not there.
Why ever not? Are we in set places this evening?
Yes, and that place is for Susie's daddy.
Eh? Yeah, it was heavily implied to be Mikotoba, but we haven't figured anything else out. I'm not a big fan of black pudding. Like, I've tried it once, and I don't think that the taste is bad. I think it's a texture thing for me.
That's right. I made it especially for you, Professor Mickey.
See. Oh, that's terribly kind of
It's a shame, really.
You mean?
Well, for a brief moment, I believed it. That Susie and I were half-sisters, I mean. Oh. Iris, do you mean... Yes, I know now. I overheard yesterday. I secretly listened into the conversation you had, after I tricked you all into thinking I'd left.
You know, you'd think that they would be more careful about that. What? Misunderstanding arose because of that autopsy report from 10 years ago. But actually, it turned out that neither Dr. Wilson nor Professor Mikotoba are Iris's father. Oh. Yes, about that, Iris. You know, I
know. You can't tell me at the moment. Oh, Iris. The pheasant is by way of an apology. I'm sorry for eavesdropping.
Oh, no, that's quite alright. Then why don't I get any apologetic pheasant? So just who is Iris's father? Suppose that's not something we'll be finding out today. So then, let us dine, while our largely pheasantless plates are still piping hot. An idea, Sholmes. It looks absolutely delicious.
Eat as much as you like. There are always seconds.
This could be our last chance to ask questions before tomorrow's trial. About that telegram from Japan, and about Kazuma. I can't let this opportunity slip away. Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Surely it's abundantly clear that I wasn't brooding over Mikotoba's refusal to share his pheasant with me. Nevertheless, I felt the need to withdraw from the social circle for a while and look on with hungry eyes.
Sorry, Hurley, but I cooked that pheasant especially for Susie's daddy.
Even though I've played the role of father to you for far longer. Mr. Sholmes? Could I discuss some things with you? Certainly, my dear fellow. I find myself quite in the mood for a spell of conversation. No doubt, you're hungry to learn more of my deep love of game. I can probably contain my curiosity on that one. You needn't look at me in that fashion. What fashion? It seems that before we discuss the pheasant, we have some rather unpheasant matters to discuss. That's a Pokemon, unpheasant. It's the third evolution of the Pidove line. So, what was in the telegram you received back from Japan then? Ah, this? I think my lucky stars had arrived in time. Record found as indicated. Duplicate follows. K. Asogi, A. Shin,
T. Gregson, J. Wilson. What? Those 4 names from the end of the last game. We've come across that exact same list before. It's what the Morse code discs had on them. It came up in that unforgettable case last spring. What appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be masking monumental intrigue. Wait. Everyone on that list is all dead, with quotation marks. Well, yeah. Appeared to be a simple case of aggravated murder turned out to be masking monumental intrigue. A plot that involved the sale of British governmental secrets to foreign states. In exposing the means by which those secrets were being leaked, we deciphered a fragment of a message. K. Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson. We didn't find the names out until the case was over, and we never did get to the bottom of what they meant. All we knew was that the information had been sent by somebody in the British government to somebody in Japan. So, why are the names coming up again now?
Yes, where did the sender of your telegram discover them, Mr. Sholmes?
I have here in the message I had wired yesterday. Allow me to read it for you. Enter Judge Jikoku's office undetected and investigate telegram records. Expect to find communication from Britain dated 1 year ago. List of 4 names. Need by tomorrow. Naruhodo. Send it to a detective I know who specializes in clandestine missions of this nature.
You asked Inspector Hosonaga to undertake such an onerous task for you?
I like that that's the picture we're using. And in my name. Wonder what guise he opted for this time. My dear fellows, it was a matter of great urgency, you understand? Anyway, list of names were found in Seishiro's office, as Sholmes predicted. So you mean that mysterious collection of names that was sent from Britain to Japan was...
It was sent to Judge Jigoku. He was the intended recipient.
I don't believe it.
But that doesn't answer the question of what the list of names actually signifies.
Thank you for the hydrate knot. I did formulate a hypothesis about that. But without a shred of evidence, I couldn't possibly have shared it. Mr. Sholmes, it's deadly serious for once. That tragedy we had to go through on the SS Bureau was all for nothing. Kazuma wasn't dead at all. We were completely taken in with the lie you told us. Your great detective's lie. I took no pleasure in deceiving you. However, at the time,
All that concerned me was preventing the young man's study tour from taking place, whatever the cost. What? I capitalized on the events that transpired to see that he was sent back to Japan.
His remains, you mean?
Precisely, Miss Susato. And then, I made sure that somebody else was sent to Britain in his stead.
Oh my, you mean...
The arrangement between our two countries was already in place. One university student lawyer and one judicial assistant to be accommodated on a study tour. In other words, by arranging for someone else to fill the place originally intended for Mr. Asogi, I would successfully prevent the man from arriving on our shores for several years at least. Wait, do you mean to say that it was all in aid of stopping Kazuma coming to Britain? That's why you... Think back, Mr. Naruhodo. Was there not somebody who quite casually urged you to continue on the voyage to England? Not casually, you were like, hey, you should do that. Terms of the study tour, negotiated by the Department of Justice in both Great Britain and Japan. In light of Mr. Asogi's unfortunate death, I'm afraid the study tour can no longer go ahead. My dear fellows, the majority of problems have an extremely simple solution, you know? All you require is one lawyer, and the study tour can continue, surely.
But there's no one else with the necessary qualifications, Mr. Sholmes. We know of no other lawyer.
The voyage to London still promises a good month of time. Ample opportunity, I would say, to find yourselves another suitable lawyer. So, you manipulated me? I've often remarked on the extraordinary lengths to which friendship will drive a man. I was quite sure that you would rise up to the challenge for your late friend. Don't believe it.
But if it was all contrived... I mean, what happened was treated by the authorities as a murder. A woman was mistakenly arrested as the perpetrator. What do you suppose became of her?
Naturally, I didn't allow the misapprehension to have any serious repercussions. I subsequently explained everything and assisted the unfortunate soul in finding the foreign refuge she sought. I seem to remember Miss Susato and I had some rather strong words for her. Well, she was certainly not devoid of all guilt. She deserved every word, I'm sure. Wonder if she made it to America then.
I'm afraid I simply cannot comprehend it. Why would you go to such lengths, Mr. Sholmes? Why were you so determined to stop Kazuma-sama from reaching Britain?
The truth is, 12 months ago, there was already a very tangible omen of the impending tragedy, you see.
Oh.
An omen that, at this very moment in time, is close at hand. An omen of all these tragic events that already existed a year ago is close at hand? We need to find out exactly what Mr. Sholmes knows. Mr. Sholmes, do you mind looking at this? This is hardly the time, Mr. Naruhodo, as I'm sure you will appreciate. Oh, no, of course not. My attention is entirely drawn to one single matter now. The pheasant. Anyone would think you hadn't eaten in weeks. There was no room for doubt with your instructions in this telegram, Mr. Sholmes. You were very clear that it was Judge Jigoku's office that should be searched, so... You obviously knew that's where the list of names would be found.
Kei Asogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, J. Wilson.
I only learnt of those 4 names just over 6 months ago now. And only because they appeared as part of the top-secret government communications that were leaked. That's true, yes. But at the time, you were unaware of the background. You see, those 4 names were wired to Japan. Around 6 months before that. Approximately this time last year, in fact, when you were both still in Japan. It really would be hypocrisy on my part to reprove others for intercepting state secrets. Because after all, I'm perpetually eavesdropping on communications between the British and Japanese governments. You're perpetually doing what? How? Never mind the details, but you should know. No secret is safe from Herlock Sholmes when he has designs on knowing it. You know, this is fully in character.
Oh my, Mr. Sholmes, what a fabulous line.
Now, 1 month after that list of 4 names was wired to the recipient, Jigoku in Japan, Dr. John H. Wilson was murdered. As soon as I learned of the incident, a hypothesis rapidly took shape in my mind. As it turned out, I was partially correct, and partially mistaken. Nevertheless, it was the beginning of all the tragic events that were to follow.
Mr. Sholmes, please, tell us all that you know. Tell us about these 4 names and the tragedy to which they're all somehow connected.
As I said, when I learned of Dr. Wilson's murder in Japan, my mind immediately turned to those 4 names, because you see, there was someone else on the list who I believe to be recently deceased. What? Who? A. Shin. It was transcribed in Japanese script. In actual fact, Miss Asa Shin. That was a familiar name to me. She was a professional killer, well known among London's unsavory classes. Oh, I see. But she had completely vanished from existence several months before Wilson's murder. So I came to the logical conclusion that she had herself been killed. And accordingly, I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on that list. So, completely random thing. Apparently the filter on the ice maker in my refrigerator went out. And that's what's been giving me weird tasting water the last few days is ice cubes from that ice maker. Just completely random thought. And accordingly, I became fearful for the lives of the remaining 2 persons on the list.
Ah, Kei Asogi and T. Gregson.
Owing to our proximity, I decided to take measures to protect Gregson myself. Can it be changed? I think so. But I determined it would be safest if young Asogi were to stay away from Britain. Ah, so that's why you went to such lengths to prevent his study tour from going ahead. Exactly.
And so, you already knew who Kazuma-sama was, Mr. Sholmes.
Oh yes, Sholmes and I have exchanged correspondence for years. I'd recounted many tales about Asogi to him in my letters. And the news of Dr. Wilson's death, of course.
And so, Dr. Wilson is dead then? I didn't know.
Oh, Iris.
I know he wasn't my daddy, but still. That's very sad. I'm so sorry, Iris. We knew the significance of the name, obviously, but we just couldn't bring ourselves to tell you. No.
But you just told us, Mr. Sholmes. Doesn't completely tie with the facts. There's one big hole in your hypothesis.
A big hole, Mr. Naruhodo.
Ah, yes. You mean about Asa Shin, I presume?
Oh, of course.
Exactly. She wasn't killed, was she? She was in Japan, posing as a visiting student under the assumed name of Giselle Brett. I'm glad you're keeping up, my dear fellow. But I only became aware of that fact 2 days ago, in the foyer of the Great Waterloo Hotel.
Ah,
And upon hearing that startling revelation, the hypothesis that I'd formed surrounding those 4 names was completely turned topsy. What? Topsy? What do you mean when you say your hypothesis was turned topsy, Mr. Sholmes? I had believed all 4 names on the list to be the names of victims. However, I was mistaken. Very much so. Asa Shin was a killer. This telegram is a list of both victims and killers, is it? Indeed, and it would seem that Miss Shin was dispatched from Britain with the sole intention of dispatching Mr. Wilson. Her visiting student status being merely a front. Ah,
which would of course explain why no motive could be determined for her actions.
the real reason Dr. Wilson was killed by Asa Shin is because he was the target of an assassination? And forearmed with that knowledge, fresh consideration of this telegram puts the list in a very different perspective. What do you mean? Well, does it not strike you? There is another among the 4, who subsequently became a visiting student. Wait, you mean... But of course, a name you know only too well. You mean Kazuma?
Oh, oh.
Did say in court earlier today. Yes, on the 31st of October, I accompanied Inspector Gregson to Dunkirk in order to carry out a mission. And the mission was the assassination of the Mark. Young Mr. Asogi accepted that mission a year ago now.
Surely not.
In conclusion, this document is a contract of sorts. An international agreement, one might say, detailing an assassin exchange. An assassin exchange? How could Kazuma possibly have gotten involved in something like that? Let's assume that we have 2 parties, each wishing to dispose of a distinct individual. Those 2 parties then make a contract to swap their respective assassination targets. That would then be an assassin exchange.
And so to begin with, the British assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Japan, where she kills her target. And then, the Japanese assassin is dispatched as a visiting student to Britain in order to eliminate his target. It certainly does sound like an exchange.
But what on earth is the point? Forget Naruhodo. The British assassin at least escaped conviction. It's diplomatic immunity afforded by consular jurisdiction. Oh, yes. Such jurisdiction should be null and void under the terms of the new treaty between our two countries. Acted was brought into place, just intervention at the very highest levels. Highest levels? These murders were two sides of the same coin, linked not by a common motive, but by a contractual agreement. As such, they appeared utterly unrelated. Yet in truth, the assassins were complicit in one singular devilish scheme. Sholmes is talking a lot, and it's really wearing me out. That disassociation and the safeguard of diplomatic immunity were, I believe, the motivation behind this plot. Wait a minute, Sholmes. This telegram really is describing the exchange of assassins as you're suggesting. It would mean that the Japanese killer's target was never Seishiro Jigoku at all. It would mean Asogi's target was actually Inspector Gregson. What? Kazuma was here for Gregson? So Judge Jikoku actually wasn't the mark.
Yes, that's exactly what it would mean.
Also, thank you for the hydrate, Lobster. I hold myself personally responsible for failing to keep the inspector safe.
Mr. Sholmes.
I told him of my fears and implored him to seek a transfer to an overseas position. Obviously, with the young pickpocket in tow. Yes, Gina. Come to think of it, Inspector Gregson did mention that to us at the Great Exhibition. That he'd be transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him. I got water on my glasses. That he'd be transferring to the Paris police and taking Gina with him. But without informing me, he engaged in one last assignment, it seems. And sadly, it turned out to be his very last. This is too much to take in. I think that he's got it backward. I think that Gregson was supposed to be killing Kazuma, and that's why Gregson accepted him coming along on the assassination mission, is he thought he could kill two birds with one stone.
Alright, everyone. That's quite enough of all that serious talk for one day. Isn't it, Hurley? I mean, look at the time.
Ah, quite right, Iris. We must conclude our preparations for tomorrow. What preparations? Well, I think I shall make my way back to my hotel room now. This has certainly been a night to remember.
It is a little bit sad, though. I mean, I like the idea of you being my daddy. Because then Susie would have been my big sister.
Sorry, Iris. I don't know why, but that grin with just the blank text box is really like... It's really like...
Naruhodo, I am going to strangle you in the middle of the night. Do you understand? You won't even realize I'm there. I'll just shove the pillow over your face and hold it there until you stop struggling. I know, Iris. I was thinking quite the same thing. Were you? But if somebody like me would be worthy, I would be delighted to become your sister. What? Really?
Yeah, that was a voice crack.
Oh yes, without question. And so, you'll teach me all the ways you know to throw Runo to the floor. Yes, of course. It would be my pleasure.
You didn't have to agree quite so readily.
Oh, but wait a minute. If Susie's gonna be my big sister, you could be my big brother if you want, Runo.
Huh? I mean, yes, of course. If you'll have me, I'll gladly be your brother. Well done, Iris. We must always be mindful of feelings. I've raised you so well. As being sensitive is your strong suit, naturally. Mr. Naruhodo, I'm just sensitive in a different way. Yo, thanks for the bits, Panstravaganza. How are you doing this evening or day, whatever, today?
Right, I'm going to work extra hard for tomorrow now, because it's all for my big brother and sister.
What is all this talk about preparing for tomorrow? Preparing what?
The jury. Actually, no, not the jury. There's no jury. We're preparing witnesses beforehand. You know, illegal stuff. You'll just have to wait and see. Though, I do need to state, I need more gunpowder for the next pipe bomb. The last time I sent one to Lord Strongheart, he took it and snapped it in half before it could go off. I need something more reinforced with more firepower.
Oh. Good luck in court tomorrow. I'm expecting a sterling performance. I'll do my very best, of course. So the overnight break in the trial's proceedings became a crucial turning point. Preparing the judge's bribe as a procedure. Exposing new truths whilst posing new conundrums. That list of 4 names in the telegram in Judge Jigoku's office. And the extraordinary assassination plot in which my best friend had somehow become involved. Felt as though I'd been plunged into an even greater darkness all of a sudden. But at the same time, I felt sure I would see the light again soon. Because I was lucky enough to have the most wonderful family in the world, standing steadfastly behind me. Sholmes and Mikotoba gay confirmed. This family's got 2 dads. Wow. Before we begin today, I have a brief announcement. Shadow the Hedgehog is a bitch-ass motherfucker. As with the closed trial 10 years ago, some astonishing facts have come to light in these proceedings. The revelation that was the well-known Reaper is actually an organization illegally executing its own brand of justice. And the discovery that the respected yard inspector was at its heart, until he himself perished in an assassination plot. Well,
I say to all members of the judiciary here present on this occasion that we will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Councils, we'll undertake this trial with the resolve to pursue the truth to the bitter end. Resolve, yes. That's the name of the game. My intention.
He said the name of the game.
My lord, if I may inquire. Defendant may speak. On what grounds is Kazuma Asogi permitted to continue his role as the prosecutor?
They're acknowledging it. They're actually acknowledging it. Big surprise, like genuine surprise. Normally Ace Attorney would say, nuh-uh, and then move on. Like,
Is admitted to colluding with the victim in a plot to assassinate an innocent man. He shouldn't be enjoying the privilege of freedom, let alone leading the prosecution. I submitted a written petition to Lord Strongheart, requesting that judgment of my transgressions be delayed by 1 day. You did what? In today's proceedings, I intend to expose everything. My whole life for the last 10 years has all been leading up to this 1 day. Kazuma, whatever the outcome of this trial, I give my word that I will accept whatever punishment is deemed appropriate, however severe. And I suggest you prepare yourself for the same, Reaper.
Kazuma is bristling with hostility today. I get the distinct impression that we're heading into very dangerous territory.
Is that really even Kazuma-sama standing before us?
As an extreme exception to normal practices, I have granted this prosecutor's request. The defense finds this acceptable, I presume.
Yes, my lord.
In that case, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the closed hearing of Barak von Zeeks.
The defense is ready, my lord.
The prosecution is more than ready. Very well, then. This preamble has taken long enough. Prosecutor Asogi, begin.
As you wish, my lord. Prosecution calls the first witness to the stand. Bring Seishiro Jigoku into the courtroom. At last, then, we've reached the final battle. He's putting literally everything on the line now in order to get to the truth. Come on, Ryunosuke. It's time for that steely resolve, as this is going to test it to the limit. Witness, state your name and occupation for the court.
Ah. So it was you who issued this, was it?
Your subpoena? I did what was necessary.
Well, look at what the young man has become. I didn't think I'd see the day when you take that tone with me, I must say. The witness will ensure his responses are pertinent to the questions asked. My name is Seishiro Jigoku, the Supreme Court Judge from the Empire of Japan.
16 years ago, this man came to London as a visiting student. 6 years later, he returned to Japan. As well as presiding over the Supreme Court, he's also currently Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I'm of course fully aware of Mr. Jigoku and his preeminent roles. I invited him personally to the International Forensic Science Symposium as a representative of his country.
Yuri also played a key role in the conclusion of the Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation. It's a great honor to be involved in negotiations. I put my all into that treaty.
Judge Jigoku, I must ask.
Well, I never. Since the young murdering student turned up here of all places.
You acquitted me yourself. And now, I'm a practicing defense lawyer.
Yes, and full of self-importance, like your friend across the courtroom, I see.
You came here to London by invitation to the International Forensic Science Symposium, or IFS for short. But then, without informing anyone of your plans, you took flight to France. You did not fly to France.
Took flight? I should object to that turn of phrase.
Then explain yourself. What exactly were the circumstances?
Well, I was somewhat expecting this. I'm sorry to say. I decline to comment.
What?
Leaving the country prematurely when I was an invited guest may be questionable etiquette. But my decision is unrelated to this case. I can't be bound to testify. Unrelated, you say? I appreciate that a respected police inspector has been killed, for which I offer my condolences. However, being an alien, I obviously never met the man, nor do I know the first thing about him. As such, I'm in no position to testify, simple as that.
So you would run from all this?
I beg your pardon?
This case is more far-reaching than the murder of Inspector Gregson. It has ties to another murder, a case that was tried in Japan almost a year ago now.
A year ago in Japan. The murder of Dr. John H. Wilson, you mean? That's right. I think it's both of them. That's right. And you, Judge Jigoku, are at the heart of both cases. The defense has evidence to prove it. Well, Ryunosuke, I see from the look in your eyes that you're resolved to carry this through to the very end, too. Roll credits. Let's see your evidence, then. What proof do you have that Seishiro Jigoku is involved in this case? Here's an interception of a British and Japanese government communication from Mr. Sholmes, yeah. You see these little things all over the place, don't you? It's the part on the top of a pocket watch when that you twist to set the time, isn't it? Wow.
It's called the crown, I believe. A watch would be quite useless without one.
Crown? Like what sits on top of a monarch's head. It's a very grand name for such a tiny part. Actually,
Yes, Mr. Naruhodo?
if this is a crown, I have a feeling I might have seen a monarch around here somewhere with a very bare head.
If by monarch you mean pocket watch, then I'm quite sure you have.
What do you think, Miss Susato?
I feel sure I know exactly what will fit here.
Really? I was just thinking precisely the same thing.
We're about to see that little round component. Is actually part of Inspector Gregson's broken pocket watch.
Really? I was just thinking precisely that too.
A perfect fit.
I knew it. All right, perhaps you knew it.
I'll make note of this new information at once.
Take that!
What on earth is that? This piece of evidence is a welcome present to the courthouse with the compliments of the defense. A poor grasp of British court etiquette, counsel. That's the extent of your resolve. You disappoint me, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Ah, that's bullshit. That is bullshit.
Stand tall, Mr. Naruhodo. That was a minor blow.
Having your best friend tell you he's disappointed in you really stings, though. Honestly, I think that my assertion is correct. I think that this should be the correct thing. Also, shit, I have to reinvestigate these. Yeah, it is, but I'm still salty about it.
Take that!
This is a telegram detailing a communication sent between Britain and Japan approximately 1 year ago. The communication contained 4 names: Keisogi, A. Shin, T. Gregson, and J. Wilson. Little... Where did you get that? In Tokyo. From your office, Judge Jigoku. What? What on earth did you... What's this all about? Why is my name on that list? This list of 4 names follows a certain pattern. T. Gregson and J. Wilson were the names of victims. Keisogi and A. Shin are the names of assassins. No. A year ago in Tokyo, Dr. John H. Wilson's life was taken in a Western-style restaurant in the capital. The culprit was found to be a visiting student who went by the name of Giselle Brett. But her real name was Asa Shin, a professional killer sent on a mission to kill from Great Britain.
A. Shin and her victim, J. Wilson.
And the murder that took place here in London was the counterpart to that crime. An assassin sent from Japan, also a visiting student, Kazuma Asogi, whose victim was the British police inspector, Tobias Gregson.
Keisogi and T. Gregson. One assassin from each country to kill a target residing in the other.
What exactly is the defense suggesting? These 2 cases of murder, one that took place in Britain and one in Japan, were masterminded by a pair of individuals from each country as a form of assassin exchange. And the telegram the defense has acquired is proof of this international contract to kill. What? The telegram was found in your office, Judge Jigoku. In other words, the mastermind in Japan was you. Judge Jigoku, what's this all about? And you, Kazuma, you lied. During yesterday's proceedings, you acknowledged that you'd accepted the assassination mission. But the mark wasn't Judge Jigoku at all. It was T. Gregson, Detective Inspector of Scotland Yard.
as shown by the name on the killing contract. Very impressive, Ryunosuke. But actually, I didn't lie. The name of the target I was ordered to kill never passed my lips yesterday. The idea that Seishiro Jigoku was the mark came entirely from you. Ah! You deliberately avoided saying a name? The defense claims these 4 names indicate some sort of international assassin exchange. I'm sure I speak for all present when I say that the very idea seems utterly absurd. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what do you have to say for yourself? His silence only goes to prove his guilt.
There's another very important point that this new development brings to light. There's now a distinct possibility that the scene of Inspector Gregson's actual murder was in the witness's cabin aboard the SS Grouse.
Judge Jigoku, you have to testify now. To refuse would put you in contempt of court. There's no need for quite such a vicious stare, young man. Very well then, as a parting gift to you all, I'll tell you everything I know. Seems this Japanese gentleman has information the court must hear about the alleged assassin exchange and the events of the night of the 31st of October. Present your formal testimony now. As you wish, my lord. It's true that Kazuma Asugi was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. Okay. Target was Inspector T. Gregson. It was a condition of the British study tour. However, in the end, something happened that meant the young man was unable to carry out his mission. On the evening in question, a member of the crew was on duty outside my cabin at all times. If there'd been a shot fired, the crewman would have heard it, so clearly I can't be involved. So you admit it then? As this communication suggests, there really was an assassin exchange arrangement between Britain and Japan. Political endeavor at the highest levels. Not something I can discuss here.
To use such a worthy practice as a foreign study to coerce somebody to commit murder. It's the most appalling thing I've ever heard.
Appalling? Well, it's easy to judge.
Pardon?
So he had a reason for taking his sword to that British inspector, you know?
What?
Which is why he accepted the mission in the first place. Isn't that right, Counsel?
Kazuma-sama.
Judge Jigoku, if you're the mastermind behind this operation in Japan, then tell the court the identity of your counterpart in Britain. Not obliged to divulge that information. As I said yesterday, I've killed nobody. I freely admit that I accepted the mission, but on the night the plan was to be executed, I backed out. In short, this assassin exchange that the defense has identified is unrelated to the events of this case. Crucial point is this. A police inspector can't have perished aboard the steamship in Dunkirk. As if he'd been shot in the cabin, it's inconceivable that a member of the crew wouldn't have heard it. That's right. Gregson was killed after returning to London, in the room on Fresno Street. And the perpetrator of the crime was the Reaper, Barrick Van Zieks. The prosecution's accusation remains unchanged. I want I want a game, like, I know that Ace Attorney Investigations has you playing as Edgeworth, but like, I want a game where you play as like the prosecution half in court and just get away with the most heinous shit possible, because the prosecutors in these games get like so much more like wiggle room to mess around with. To think that a seemingly innocent foreign exchange program was a facade for such a Machiavellian dealings. Machiavellian's a good word. Clearly it's a plot only a government minister and high-ranking judge such as the witness could hope to execute. Well, I seem to recall that it was somebody on the British side. Controlled everything. Be that as it may, it is not the place of this court to pursue the villainous assassin exchange plot. They are concerned only with the tangible events pertaining to the murder of Inspector Gregson. Yeah, exactly. Someone like Strongheart? Is the defense clear on that point, counsel? Yes, my lord. I'll keep that in mind as I cross-examine the witness. It's true that Ryunosuke was assigned the assassination mission 1 year ago now. This is incorrect. Because of this. I'm gonna save because, like, I keep getting... Strongheart, you seem overly defensive on this topic. Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit.
Objection!
Yes, as the court has heard, there was a crewman posted outside Judge Jigoku's cabin. Judge Jigoku is such a difficult thing to say. However, can we be sure that contrary to the witness's claim, or we can be sure that contrary to the witness's claim, the guard wasn't there at all times? What? I have here a notice of a particular event that was scheduled to take place aboard the steamship on the 31st. Where did you get that? It's evidence gathered by Mr. Herlock Sholmes. You were acquainted yesterday, if you remember. Herlock Sholmes again. According to this itinerary... I've got crap on my glasses again. Not water this time. Just an eyelash that's stuck to my glasses. Ugh, come on. I'm gonna switch over to my stronger glasses. Just because they're clean. Probably give me a headache, but... We'll get to that bridge when we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll get to that bridge when we get to it. According to this itinerary, after leaving the port of Dunkirk at exactly 11 p.m. and for a period of 20 minutes, all crewmen of the SS Grouse were together on deck for an evacuation drill. All crewmen were away from their posts? And during that 20-minute interval, of course, any gunshots emanating from your cabin would have been heard by no one. The Angie. In summary, Judge Jigoku, nuh-uh, you're lying. You had ample opportunity to commit the crime. Ugh.
Objection!
A 20-minute window of opportunity. That's an excellent find, Ryunosuke. But it amounts to nothing. Why? Because the witness clearly stated in his testimony that no incident occurred in his cabin. Unless you have some decisive evidence that can show his testimony to be fake. Your accusation is nothing more than conjecture. Very true. Well, counsel. Inspector Gregson was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin that night. I'm certain of it. Because the defense has the evidence to prove it. We'll present the evidence for the defense at once, counsel. What proof do you have that the victim's life was taken in Jigoku's cabin on the 31st of October?
Take that!
Judge Jigoku, this was found in your cabin yesterday. What is that? Out of a pocket watch. A pocket watch? And if you will observe, the victim's pocket watch, which we know he treasured, is missing precisely that part. It can't be. Moreover, this crown is a perfect fit on the spindle protruding from the victim's watch. Now, the fact that this was retrieved from Judge Jigoku's cabin tells us that the victim's watch almost certainly broke there. In other words, the victim was killed on the 31st during the 20-minute evacuation drill in the cabin occupied by you, Judge Jigoku. Well, you're razor sharp, aren't you? You young murderer.
Objection!
Expertly maneuvered, Ryunosuke. Your argument sounds entirely plausible. At first. But rather like this pocket watch, it's full of cracks. What? I believe Judge Jigoku feels the same way. I was wrong to acquit you earlier in the year. Sorry? Known that it would result in anyone having to listen to this drivel. Would have declared you guilty just to spare the world your ridiculous bombast. Yeah, the thing that kind of frustrates me with this is that why don't we have anything saying, hey, there was a bullet hole in the wall in his room? I think it's clear. How did that come out so deep? What the hell? That the witness will have to give further testimony. Or exactly what happened in my cabin that night. You'll notice the pitfall into which you stumbled. Prior to your renewed testimony, I would like to clarify one point. The fact that this part of the victim's watch was discovered in your cabin means that you acknowledge he was there, I presume. Yes, I do. Very well, then. You may proceed to give your formal testimony about what exactly happened in your cabin aboard the ship on the evening of the 31st of October. Of course, as a man of the law, I have no intention of obstructing justice. Incorrect. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with a Nippon Sei throw. He couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain. His body was found in London. You've been doing a lot of that, tons of obstruction. To be fair, like, honestly, if you squint hard enough, almost every character, like almost every judge and prosecutor, like, obstructs justice in some way.
Ippon Seoi. Common jujitsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force. Man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you?
What?
The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there.
Ah.
I've no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger.
Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Jigoku will be deemed to have no involvement in the case.
Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination.
Sorry, my lord. The defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that.
An embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo.
He might not be showing it, but I think Jigoku is scared because he knows how thoroughly Ryunosuke can pick apart arguments from the one time he was in court with him. If he finds even the tiniest inconsistency, he knows where to strike.
I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin, after finishing my evening meal in the dining room.
Because the so-called guard posted at your cabin door had just let your killer pass, you mean?
Apparently, Gregson told the crewman he was a police inspector. It was the truth, of course.
He wouldn't have his identification with him, though.
His trench coat and mustache, not to mention the bag of chips. I imagine the crewman was convinced.
The man accompanying him would have had 2 swords slung across his waist.
You mean me?
Who else?
Yes, that's true. Would have hoped the sight of a few swords might have set off alarm bells on the guard's head.
The point is, I left the cabin before its occupant returned. I immediately disembarked the ship.
Certainly, all I can tell you is that only the inspector was waiting for me when I arrived back at my cabin. You entered without any inkling of suspicion. That's right, none whatsoever. When I walked through the door, a mustachioed Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me.
Hold it!
Obviously, you're talking about Inspector Gregson.
Yes, though at the time I didn't know the man's name. There was no time for introductions. I value my life over manners.
By which you mean that the inspector was there to assassinate you, I suppose.
That was certainly the impression given by the gun pointing in my direction. I've never seen the muzzle of a revolver shake about so much in all my life. One would think the man had never shot somebody before.
Believe it or not, most of us haven't.
Anyway, there was no time to call for help. With the help of the crewman at the door. I dealt with the man myself. As soon as I took care of him with an Ippon Seoi throw, though, couldn't wait to run away after that.
Hold it!
Even though the man had a gun. That was a very brave move, wasn't it?
Ippon Seoi is far faster than a bullet, I can assure you.
Surely all the commotion caused the crewman to come in, didn't it?
Yes, of course. Burst in immediately without knocking. Inspector hurled himself at the stocky fellow and just managed to slip past him to make his escape.
Outstanding guard does it again.
Luckily, there aren't many situations I can't get out of using a quick Ippon Seoi throw. Imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with the murder.
Hold it!
Judo chop. Crown snapped off and the glass covering the face of the watch was cracked.
Preferable to the man's head being pulled off or his spine cracking, wouldn't you say?
Not that the man was spared for long. Bullet to the chest soon saw to that. But the point is, the broken pocket watch doesn't prove that a murder took place.
Absolutely not. All the watch proves is the power of my jujitsu throw.
Whatever you say, it doesn't quite ring true that no shot was fired in that cabin. Because there was an obvious bullet hole in the wall.
What are you talking about?
Huh?
So the star of your lowbrow detective stories told you, is it? Well, I don't care for such fiction. Haven't you worked it out yet, little stripling? No murder took place in my cabin. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. Whoops.
So that's his story.
Well, I suppose if you think about it, whenever you drop a teacup in the office and it breaks, we don't say, Mr. Naruhodo must have been murdered there, do we?
A veiled threat about what might happen to me if I break another one?
And the fact is that Inspector Gregson's body was found in the little room on Fresno Street. If he really was killed in Judge Jigoku's cabin,
Body would have had to been moved somehow, obviously. Transporting a dead body over a country border, that would be impossible for the majority of people. So there must have been some special circumstances that made it possible for the culprit then.
that would be a vital realization, I think, Mr. Naruhodo.
Hold it!
Inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London.
There's no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive.
Just take a moment to think of that idea of yours. Through now, stripling.
What?
The inspector was killed on the steamship in France. How on earth could he have got back to Britain? People die, their bodies remain in the same spot. It's a devil of a thing.
Well then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body.
How exactly? Carrying a corpse off a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think?
Well, yes, that's true, but
All passenger luggage is inspected when it's unloaded from arriving vessels. And I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage.
if the murder has taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. It's killed that idea, then.
But perhaps not.
Susato?
We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them. which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body at sea.
Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? Thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony with your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There's no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Do we have his trunk as evidence? Sholmes! We're missing so much important shit! Oh, the picture of him with the trunk. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I'm gonna make a safety save because, bullshit, but...
Objection!
There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. What's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. He mentioned that before, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. We learnt that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took a rather long time. I must say I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? I knew you were jealous. I presume you recall this, Judge Jigoku. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside.
Mr. Naruhodo, surely you're not suggesting...
I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us inside Judge Jigoku's trunk. I called it. Order! Order! Order in court! I'm skeptical, counsel. A grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku?
But inside his trunk, how horrifying.
And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street. Taking your trunk with you in a cab to deposit the inspector's body. You don't have to listen to this nonsense. How does the smell not permeate? That's a good question. Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged that there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are. But one place they're certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages. Metal's just too strong. And the SS Grouse is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Judge Jigoku? However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. I can see you've both laid firm foundations for that already.
Judge Jigoku, please, stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made accusations against you. How do you respond?
Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there?
Why ever not?
Before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, let's first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite illogical. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution's stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. I'm just gonna sit here and bury my head in the sand. You should know by now that it doesn't matter what you say, Ryunosuke. I'm stubborn as a mule, and I'm gonna stick with this dying argument to the very end. As the accused, Barrick Van Zieks shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, Vince's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in the little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid it's the prosecution's claim that's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because that claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. I actually genuinely don't know. I don't remember if I saved here already. No, because the candles would be like, the candles... I actually genuinely don't know. It might be the blood on the side of the trunk, but...
Take that!
The Japanese really are a curious breed. To pro-offer an argument with such conviction, only to present such nonsensical evidence. Perhaps my Japanese friend's inexplicable thinking is why people talk of the mystique of the East. In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not the only Japanese around here. You even have a mirror? Court is not interested in the mystique of anything. You'll be penalized accordingly. I'll take a hint, like...
Take that!
A photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. Nice catch, Lobster. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. Sorry to disappoint you. Your logic is flawed. Could have easily adopted the fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal.
Objection!
I'm sorry to disappoint you, Judge Jigoku, but it's your logic that's flawed. What? According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Ugh. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. Though the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting... The inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor from the inside of the large travel trunk. No!
You're quite right. The shape of the body looks exactly as though it had been kept in a confined space.
Judge Jigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Ugh. Present my trunk. I refuse. I forgot what his voice was. What? On what grounds? Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Empire of Japan.
I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because some stripling's baseless accusations.
In other words, Judge Jigoku, there is blood in your trunk.
I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that allow me to.
At this moment, you're not a government minister. You are a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be. You will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Ugh. Ugh.
Order. Order in court. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be?
Can't be serious. You did it?
You no shame at all, Kazuma Asogi.
What?
Very well, I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk, exactly as postulated by the defense.
What? You... God.
Outrageous!
So it was you. You admit to Inspector Gregson.
No. I admit nothing more than what I've said. Killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? Merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin. In order to avoid unwanted attention, as the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else.
You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man?
To know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life.
Oh,
That's right. Who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Asogi.
You... I never thought you'd stoop to this, Seishiro Jigoku.
Taking the words straight out of my mouth. Prosecutor Kazuma Asogi. Not by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, prosecution counsels already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less.
You wouldn't.
So, what do you make of that, young stripling? Heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I'll admit to nothing more.
I don't believe this.
Counsel for the defense. What is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi.
This isn't the dead end it seems to be. The answer is right in front of me. It comes down to Jigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well. The defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Jigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Asogi is possible. Judge Jigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process.
It is, no question.
Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Asogi to commit the crime. What? The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? Professor Asogi. Yeah, but we don't have evidence of that. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Asogi's involvement? Like, my thought is that it's the autopsy report, because, like, it's a very flimsy argument, but, like, there's no cuts on the body. And Asogi absolutely would have used a sword if he was to try to kill somebody.
Take that!
Making the evidence weep here, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Sorry? Every piece of evidence has a role to play in arriving at the truth. They're not playthings you can toss around in the courtroom for entertainment.
Never mind the evidence. You're about to make me weep, Mr. Naruhodo.
Oh no, I can't upset Susato-san, or I'll end up being upset too. No member of the crew was on sentry duty outside the first-class cabins nearby at the time. So as long as the guard was there, it would have been impossible to fire a shot without it being heard. And that very much narrows down when the crime could have been committed. Narrows down when the crime could have been committed. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Take that!
This itinerary for crew members of the SS Grouse, my lord. This is conclusive proof. Itinerary? How does that prove anything? Judge Jigoku, the moment you acknowledge that you found the victim's body in your cabin, this itinerary suddenly became much more significant. What? Why? On the night in question, as always, a crewman's sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock, as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this. When the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Ugh. Now, clearly the murder could have only been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. Oh, that's the angle they're going with this. But Prosecutor Asogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent that night at a boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. Ugh. No, absolutely not. I don't accept this at all. What do you mean? I was just saying that to exonerate himself. Can't trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Here's where the logbook thing is coming in, because he signed the logbook at the place that he stayed in. Immediately after he left my cabin, he hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back in. No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the accommodations register book. All extremely easy to verify, and undeniable proof. Ugh, no, There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer, as a common man. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Seishiro Jigoku? A damned trial 10 years ago. That's when this all began. Back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. Ugh. It's over. My life is over. Broke the witness's bench clean in two. British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan. Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. Assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Asogi. Things didn't go according to plan. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain. And you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement. Because I was already on my way to Britain at the time in Kazuma's place. That left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. Eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium. I presume? That's right. I decided it would be safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain. So I enlisted the help of my British counterpart. Made my arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper.
What?
Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. Mastermind of the entire operation, the Reaper himself.
Ah. So, that means that the assassin exchange was all planned by the Reaper.
Not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission, dutifully infiltrated my cabin onto the steamship. All a trap designed to lead him to France, to his own death.
Oh, how awful.
It's past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him the time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. There was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. And the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion. I bided my time, waiting.
For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock.
I'd intended to finish him by strangulation. Moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the judiciary as a visiting student. I'd never imagined I'd use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it?
I mean, he is a part of the... He's like a part of the nobility, so... Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Grouse. Which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street.
Young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There's no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room.
And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police.
I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London.
In that case, you must have known. You must have had an intimate detail of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule.
Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. Inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Boone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit. I took a hackney carriage up over there with the body still in my trunk.
That must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then.
Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee. I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street, I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers.
Miss Venus, of course.
Conceived of the candle trick there and then. I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replace a gunshot.
What sort of disguise?
For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece for his own traveling case. Or in his own traveling case. I put that on, although I suspect I drew more attention to myself than I would have otherwise.
The hairpiece we found at the scene. The inspector had it ready for the Redheaded League investigation.
We arrived at the room at around 5:15. So I quickly placed the body on the floor and moved the notice board to set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later.
so that Mr. Boone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except, last moment, I made a careless blunder.
What was that?
I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips.
Ah,
I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration. Put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police investigators. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty.
An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea.
Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us.
Enough.
This guy's voice has been all over the place. I know that his voice is just supposed to be the judge voice, but like...
Already told you that I cannot say.
Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again.
What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with for now?
Can we get this over with now?
It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then, in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Seishiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found guilty. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this closed court.
Objection? No.
Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt.
Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo.
This isn't even anywhere close to being done. Like, I get the feeling that we're gonna have to tear into the professor case more now. Yes, thank you.
Is something wrong?
I'm just a little troubled by his silence.
The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange. You remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, you've reached a conclusion.
Jeez.
I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor. As you wish, now for the formal adjudication. hereby declare the defendant,
Objection.
Barrack von Zieks. The prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel. The accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all. And therefore, it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That's the prosecution's unwavering position.
What? But Judge Jikoku has already confessed.
Nevertheless, Barrack von Zieks has committed crimes for which he must be punished. Well, it would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Ryunosuke. Certainly. Murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Seishiro Jigoku. But it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot. Into the sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is who coerced Jigoku? Who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France, having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly. It would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barrack von Zieks, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. What? Order! 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 The Reaper of the Bailey. Long-standing mystery, Counsel. Are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case?
The Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord Van Zieks very thoroughly in that regard. And they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper.
Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself. Which means that we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitely the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. You know, here's the thing. This is another instance of that, like, of the whole thing of, like, I wish we got a game where we were able to pull this kind of bullshit. If the defense tried this, they would immediately shoot it down for not being the same case. Like, they'd be like, nope, he's good. Like, on this thing, he's fine. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You're guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord Van Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. We'll stop at nothing to finish what Lord Van Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well. Whilst it is extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all involvement he has with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. Thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing.
pray turn a blind eye to the discourtesy, as I verified that this vile and unremitting accusation hasn't soured the contents of my hallowed chalice.
Lord Van Zeeks.
I first had to suffer the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now. Ever since that time, I've endured the weight of the implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now, and to crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord Van Zeeks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness. In order that he may answer the accusation brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. What says the defense?
And putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous. And Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically.
You're right that he's not himself. But I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer, and as his friend.
And then that's what we must do.
The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well. Defendant, you will take the witness stand. Give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the assassin exchange. As you wish, my lord.
Do you think they just have, like, spare witness stands?
I've never taken the life of another, nor have I instructed another to kill. I've been investigating the truth behind the Reaper for years. I was aware of Gregson's involvement. That's the reason why I went to Fresno Street that day, how I came to discover the body. The point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. Clearly, therefore, there's no reason to suspect me of being behind the assassin exchange.
They had one on standby since Jigoku was coming.
Deny all accusations by the prosecution. Both that you are the Reaper of the Bailey, that you masterminded the assassin exchange. I acknowledge that the public at large believe me to be the Reaper. However, that's a fallacy, which I alone am in a position to forswear. Naturally, the prosecution believes the testimony just given by the accused to be untrue. Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Yes? Let me ask you, why are you here? What really brings you to this courtroom? A desire to uncover the truth. Even if the truth proves your client to be guilty. From all my experiences in this courtroom, I've come to realize something. The truth can't be hidden. Sooner or later, it will come out. So it's always my intention to work with my client in pursuit of the truth. I want you to remember what you just said. Enough dilatory chatter. Counsel for the defense, proceed to cross-examine the witness.
Yes, my lord.
I know exactly what you're thinking, Kazuma. I know you're just waiting to point it out. Contradiction you're convinced lies somewhere within this man's testimony.
So, the point is, no common thread exists between myself, Gregson, and Dr. Wilson. This is factually incorrect because of Clint's autopsy report. Because the coroner was John Wilson.
credit to Inspector Gregson for petitioning so doggedly for the autopsy procedure. Yeah.
Objection!
What is this? An autopsy report? Wait, this is 10 years old. The autopsy of Clint Van Zeeks. What? My brother's autopsy report. I'm pleased to see. Defense doesn't intend to run from the undeniable truth. Order in court. What reason do you have for presenting a 10-year-old autopsy report here, counsel? The autopsy report of the professor's final victim, is an indelible link between Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson, and the defendant. Not that accursed name again. The professor. I've personally researched all of the court records relating to the case. I know that at the time, autopsy was considered sacrilege to the victim's souls. For a member of the aristocracy like Lord Clint Van Zeeks, it was unthinkable. But someone implored the powers that be to allow the autopsy to go ahead. Inspector Gregson. He declared that he was certain he would obtain conclusive proof from the procedure.
And it was Dr. Wilson who conducted the autopsy. His signature is clearly visible on the document.
As promised by Gregson, the autopsy did indeed produce evidence. Evidence that conclusively proved Genshin Asogi was guilty of the murders. In my brother's dying moments, he mustered all his remaining strength to leave that vital clue behind. Indeed, that was the key to indicting the professor for his crimes. The conclusive evidence that convicted him. It enabled Lord Van Zeeks here to avenge his brother's senseless death with a marvelous victory in court. Marvelous victory, was it? I wonder if that's really true. What? Could the same be said if it turned out that the key piece of evidence in question was in fact fabricated? If the inspector, the coroner, and the prosecutor all colluded together to cast an innocent Japanese man as a mass murderer to send him to his death. That's outrageous. And now, 10 years later, for some reason the secret has been threatened and needs protecting. Which is why the inspector and the coroner had to be silenced, isn't it? By someone in power in Japan and in Britain, using the two killers recruited for the assassin exchange. Order at once. 10 years ago, my father was convicted in this very courtroom as a mass murderer, to be sentenced to death. But it was all a sham, and I swore to myself that I'd prove it. Which is why I had to come to Britain. Whatever the cost. You'll have to forgive me if I feel compelled to toast this vengeful Nipponese's tenacity of purpose here. However, he who fails to quash his emotions in the courtroom has failed as a lawyer. Come on, Kazuma. You know this won't wash. You're claiming your father was misrepresented in a trial that took place a whole decade ago. You must see that without evidence, that's nothing more than a wild accusation. As it happens, I have evidence. What? As the court has heard, I crossed the channel to France with Gregson on the 31st. I went with him on the pretext of being the assassin recruited to kill Seishiro Jigoku, My true intentions were to make the inspector tell me the truth. What truth? The truth about the evidence. He acknowledged what I've already deduced. It was a closely guarded secret about what went on in that autopsy 10 years ago. What? Secret? I know nothing of any secret. While we waited for my supposed mark in Jigoku's cabin, I drew my clan's illustrious sword, Karuma, before the inspector's eyes. He very quickly understood what my true motive was. Right, I see. You're that Asogi's young lad, are you? What, you're gonna cut me down with that thing, is that it? It will very much depend on the answers you give to my questions. I want to know what really happened 10 years ago. The truth, that's all. Before we get into it, let me make one thing clear. I still believe your father was the professor, there's no doubt in my mind. But unfortunately, back then, didn't have the evidence we needed to make the crime stick. So, you admit it then? The evidence used in my father's trial was fabricated? It's for the good of the country. Anyway, I'm just following orders. Orders? What exactly did you do? Speak. Not saying another word. Even if your life depends on it? That's right. Even then. So that's when the tip of the sword broke.
Oh, Kazuma-sama.
Results of Clint Van Zeek's autopsy report were fabricated. And the investigating officer, Gregson, and the lead coroner, Wilson, must have known about it. And they can only have been ordered to pervert the course of justice in that way by one man. The man leading the case for the prosecution, Barrick Von Zeeks. In other words, the defendant did have cause to organize this exchange of assassins. Exactly. As it was established earlier, it has to have been the Reaper himself who liaised with Jigoku in Japan to arrange the exchange. Yeah, I was gonna say, Van Zeek's got Edgeworthed. Yeah, Strongheart was the prosecutor in that case, actually. Before, Van Zeeks took over. So it follows that the Reaper's true identity can only be that of the man who stands accused in this courtroom today, Barrick Von Zeeks. Lana skied.
Objection!
Kazuma Asogi. What? What you've just told the court. Are you absolutely certain of your facts? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence for that trial 10 years ago? It's similar, yeah. I heard it with my own ears. His shameful admission. In that case, I know. The name of the Reaper. What? Lord Van Zeeks. I gave no such orders. I know that for certain. Which narrows down the remaining possibilities to one. If Lord Van Zeeks isn't the one behind all this, then yes, there is only one other person who could have done something like this. I believe I know who it is too. You. I just had a feeling this name was going to come up. The true identity of the infamous Reaper of the Bailey is Lord Male Strongheart.
Take that!
The only person who could have arranged the assassin exchange and manipulated the autopsy results is the Lord Chief Justice himself, Lord Male Strongheart. Lord Strongheart. Yes, it is true that 10 years ago the defendant handled the prosecution of the professor in court. But he only took over the case after his brother, Lord Clint Van Zieks, had been killed. I can only assume that this is the most inappropriate joke in British judicial history. Well, Lord Van Zieks, 10 years ago, I was very new to my profession. I had a burning desire to avenge my brother's death, so I pleaded for control of the case. The investigation to that point, the supplication of the lords to allow my brother's corpse to be examined. All the evidence I was given, the autopsy reports, it all came from you. I've spent my life since then, believing I was in your debt for the way you stood aside and let me handle the trial. But I see now that I was very much mistaken. It was a hugely influential force that caused the inspector and the coroner to break the law 10 years ago. And that same force was still felt a decade later on the other side of the world, by Seishiro Jigoku. Lord Strongheart. Everything falls into place when we recognize that you are the Reaper of the Bailey. The court awaits your response, my lord. This may very well go down in British judicial history. I assure you, it is no joke. Consider this a formal accusal by the defense. It doesn't warrant a response. Formal accusal? Don't be absurd. Defense's claims are utter nonsense. Wild fantasy at best. You're not going to defend yourself. You claim there was some wrongdoing with Lord Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. That's utterly untrue.
Objection!
But I heard it from Gregson's own lips. He admitted to it. And where is your evidence? What? Gregson's dead now, unless you are thinking of summoning a ghost to the stand. If this was literally any other Ace Attorney game, we could. You mean to say? Oh, whoops. Forget how the system works in your little backwater country. But in the courts of the British Empire, without evidence, there is no cause or case. I have no intention of entertaining some wild fantasy that can't possibly be substantiated by anyone or anything. Order in the court. Following Inspector Gregson's murder and in light of Dr. Wilson's death as well. Have a good night, Sanjay. There
There's really no one left who could testify about the events of 10 years ago, is there? So that was the real purpose of the assassin exchange. This court has no business raking over the coals of a case that was conducted a decade ago. The accusal brought by the prosecution and the defense is categorically denied. I take it there are no objections. Kazuma, he's more or less waited his whole life for this moment. Is there really nothing else we can do now? Is there no other avenue we can go down in pursuit of the truth of what happened all those years ago? If only there was someone who could testify about Clint Van Zieks' autopsy. There is someone. He's gone to extraordinary lengths to cover his tracks. Even so far as dispatching an assassin all the way to Japan to ensure Dr. Wilson's silence. Dr. Scythe won't say anything against Strongheart. But there's still one ray of hope.
Objection!
Get fucking DL6'd. Yeah.
Actually, there is one person. One person who could still testify about that autopsy. Don't be ridiculous. There's no one left. Who? Ryunosuke, who? Tell me. Kazuma, Please. This trial can't end. Not yet. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the truth. Person the defense would like to call to the stand to testify about the autopsy of Lord Clint Van Zieks is... This is smart.
Take that!
Heaven help us. Another Japanese. An expert in forensic medicine, my lord. Professor Yujin Mikotoba, 16 years ago. He came to London with Seishiro Jikoku and Genshin Asogi as a visiting student. What could his testimony possibly tell us?
Professor Mikotoba was the primary assistant during the autopsy in question. He was also the person who actually penned the report.
Incorrect. That autopsy was carried out by the coroner, Dr. Wilson. The report carries his signature.
It was the primary assistant's duty to keep a written record of the coroner's work during the procedure. In actual fact, the coroner merely read over the report at the end and signed it.
In other words, Professor Mikotoba witnessed the entire autopsy from start to finish. The defense demands that Professor Mikotoba be summoned as a witness as a matter of urgency. Whatever really happened in that autopsy laboratory 10 years ago is something only he can tell us. Defense's demand is denied. What?
But Professor Mikotoba is in London at this very moment. We could summon him to the stand in minutes.
No, of course he's not going to agree to it. Strongheart has no intention of summoning anyone who knows. He's too concerned about protecting himself. Prosecutor Asogi, let me refresh your memory as you seem to have forgotten the prosecution's stance. Only minutes ago, you accused the defendant of being the Reaper and of masterminding the assassin exchange. I did, yes. So present your evidence for those claims. Make your case complete. At this time, I don't have the requisite evidence. That is exactly why we need witness testimony. The professor case is closed. There are no clues in the distant past that will bolster your argument today. I'm afraid to say, Prosecutor Asogi, you would appear to be possessed by the spirit of your late homicidal father.
This case, you know, now that I'm looking at it more, this case really is starting to look more and more like, case 5 from the first game. Now, as I stated earlier, this court has already reached a conclusion with respect to the matter at hand. Inspector Gregson was murdered by Japanese Supreme Court Judge Seishiro Jigoku. As for any hidden circumstances that may exist, they will be investigated in due course by the proper authorities.
Objection!
But we all know what will happen. That'll just give the mastermind of the whole venture time to cover his tracks again. By which you mean me. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi. Oh shit, did I leave my stuff as Link to the Past? Whoops. I totally forgot to change my stream category, whoops. I was in a rush to get stuff set up. Whoops. Your punishment for this contemptible behavior will be decided at a later date. As for you, Prosecutor Asogi. Also, how are you doing? I don't know how to pronounce your name, but welcome in. You will be remanded following these proceedings. Willingly, I trust, since you gave your word. This futile game of revenge is over, young Master Asogi. That will be all. I hereby declare this trial to be over. Mr. Sholmes! This is no place for amateur detection, Mr. Sholmes. May I remind you that these proceedings are closed to the general public. We'll leave the courtroom at once.
Objection!
I'm glad that you enjoy it. Mr. Sholmes was instrumental in the apprehension of Seishiro Jigoku before he fled from Europe. The court should hear what he has to say. Lord Male Strongheart, it is imperative that you refrain from bringing this trial to an end at this stage. Is it really? And why would that be? You need only recall your own words from the opening of the trial to answer that question, if I may. We will stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth behind these disturbing findings. Surely it can't be that the shock of being accused of being the Reaper yourself has erased that from your memory, can it? The whole truth, sir, has already been uncovered. It would seem that we have a great many important members of the judiciary present here today. I put it to you, my dear fellows, should the trial end at this juncture? After all, why have you been invited to attend? To nod along to the prevarications of your superiors? Order in the court. It seems to me that we stand before a door that leads to a new era of legal practices. A door that is ajar.
Let us emerge from the shadows of the Reaper's decade-long ascendancy. For you and you alone, my dear fellows, have the power to push this door open now. Auditors in the gallery have no rights to express an opinion on court proceedings. Silence. He's right. The judge has absolute authority here.
Yes, if he calls the trial to an end, it must end.
What will that really do? Or what will that really do? I sense dark things occurring behind the scenes. Things indeed. Is there a single person present who can honestly say, I missed that. What was that last one? He didn't... Or he doesn't... It's the same? What? Trial should go on. Summon the witness.
That's right. We need to clear this up before the young Japanese fellows remanded in...
Why did those scroll by so fast?
Is remanded in custody.
My lord, you assured those present that you would uncover the whole truth here.
Vindicate yourself to this outlandish accusation.
Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's the very foundation of British law. A toast to my dependable colleagues in the gallery. Well, my lord, you hear the voice of British justice, I take it? I think you'll find it will be rather awkward to silence. Court will recess briefly. I have no intention of shirking from these allegations. Bailiff, arrange for the subpoena of the witness at once. As soon as the gentleman arrives at the courthouse, we shall reconvene. A recess won't be necessary, my lord. Pardon? Mikotoba is a close friend of mine. He accompanied me today and is waiting in the antechamber as we speak. I do believe he's been enjoying a little trip down memory lane, in fact. What? Professor Mikotoba is here in the courthouse. Mr. Sholmes, you didn't know this would happen, did you? My dear fellow, no one is in a better position to answer that question than you, surely. Wasn't just asking for the fun of it, you know? Well, must thank you for your assistance in this matter, Mr. Sholmes. However, you are of no further use here. Kindly leave the courtroom at once. But of course. In truth, I find myself rather busy now as a result of these developments. Mr. Naruhodo? Ah, yes? I trust you have Iris's little lucky charm with you. Absolutely. Still in my pocket. She sends her regards, and a reminder. If you find yourself at a dead end, the ears are at your disposal. Just one tug, if you please. Oh, of course. In that case, trial will continue without delay. Bailiff, show the witness to the stand. So it's Lord Strongheart. He's the Reaper of the Bailey. Where exactly is this trial going to take me, I wonder? Just how deep am I about to be plunged into the blackness of the abyss? Well, I'm ready. I'm ready to head into the heart of this maelstrom and confront whatever horrors it tries to drown me under. Yeah, I was about to say, that's gonna be where I end for tonight. Exclamation point Discord if you want to join the Discord. Exclamation point socials if you want to follow my VODs channel or my Blue Sky.
Otherwise, give me just a sec and we'll find someone to raid. Okay. Um... Let's raid DG. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed. Just double checking. Okay. I should be streaming tomorrow. I should be streaming, more of this tomorrow, and probably finishing it, unless there's more. Like, way, way more than I think there is. But, yeah, I should be back to more of this tomorrow, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Other than that, I hope to see you for that. Have a good one, and take care.